You're currently watching this on an Xbox, apparently. I touched upon this in my recent Game Vault video, if you want to check that out, link somewhere. Phil Spencer has been doing interview after interview and he's been spilling his guts, and there is one line actually that concerns me greatly, but in a nutshell, they won't be doing a mid-season refresh, which we kinda knew anyway. He actually took shots at Sony for doing the PS5 Pro, and each to their own there. I know, like my brother-in-law for example, he bought one. I asked him why, he said, I don't know, I just wanted it. And I guess that's kind of like brand loyalty. It's why people continue to buy iPhones. They don't know why they want them, but they do every year, without fail. And I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong for buying a PS5 Pro, for wanting one, or wishing Xbox did like an Xbox Pro, for example. If you want the latest, greatest, best shiny thing, go for it. If you can afford it, there's no one stopping you. For me personally, I'm glad Xbox didn't do like an Xbox Pro mid-season refresh. Of course, they did do that Xbox Series X all digital, which is fine if you want that sort of thing. I don't really know why you would want to buy one that's discless, if you will, when it's the same price or more or whatever it is. But this whole "this is an Xbox" shtick is dividing people. I say dividing people. There's about 3 people who like it, and then the rest of humanity thinks it's a terrible idea and can't get on board with it. And I'm here to tell you, I think I might be one of the 3. Cloud gaming has been a thing for a very, very long time. There have been dedicated cloud gaming services that have come and gone because the world wasn't ready for it. It wasn't able to live up to the expectations people had for cloud gaming. See, the big issue with cloud gaming is what everyone says first. What about the latency though? For me personally, the latency is only really going to matter if you're playing an esport. So if you're playing competitive EAFC or competitive Call of Duty or Destiny, Overwatch, Fortnite, those kind of games will rely on super fast, snappy responsiveness. The latency needs to be as minimal as possible, if not zero, which is not technically possible, but you get the idea. It needs to be very, very low. Cloud gaming adds another obstacle in the way, so the signal has to go even further to reach once you've pressed that input. So it makes sense that it's not going to be as responsive if I was playing a game natively on my Xbox in my living room, for example. Now that being said, I don't actually know how big it's going to be. Is it going to be noticeable, or will it only really be noticeable for those esports type games? So for someone like myself who used to play FIFA at a very, very mediocre level, I can more than understand why competitive players will be apprehensive about this and think, well, that's not really for me. And I think they're probably right, because even me as an average player of a game like EAFC, even I get frustrated when certain inputs are not quite quick enough. I've pressed the button and it just takes that little bit too long for them to perform the animation. And that can come down to several factors, right? Ping being high, the latency, the game itself. There's loads of different reasons. The TV that I'm playing it on, for example. And I think that's okay. This doesn't have to be for everyone, because they are still going to make dedicated hardware. Phil Spencer said we are going to continue to make consoles. So if you are a competitive gamer, and for some reason you are on Xbox, because I think the majority of them are on PlayStation, but if you are on Xbox as a competitive gamer, this just doesn't appeal to you, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be for you. This is to get people in through the door who either can't afford to buy the hardware or who don't want to buy the hardware. I've got a PlayStation. There are some exclusives on Xbox I wouldn't mind playing, for the time being anyway, until they are eventually just shipped over to Sony and Nintendo. But for example, a new Gears of War comes out and Timmy wants to play it, but he can't play it because his family only buys PlayStations. He can't afford to go out and spend 400 quid on an Xbox Series X. Oh, I've got this Fire Stick lying around, or I've got a phone, I can play it on there, because guess what? This is an Xbox. Still has to buy the game, of course, but you get the idea. It's going to be far cheaper than buying an actual console. Why I think I'm one of the 3 is because this is genius. It is going to rely heavily on that latency and how reliable it is. Of course, we can test it now because cloud gaming exists through Game Pass. I haven't actually delved into this, and for all I know, it's an absolute pile of steaming hot garbage. But if it works, and it's not that bad, this is probably going to be even better because they've thought about it, they've put more effort into it, they realise they're going to have an influx of people using cloud services, so surely the system should run slightly better than it does already. So how can this not be a good thing? I know hardcore Xbox enthusiasts will say, well, this is completely out of touch, it's not on brand, they don't know what they're talking about, we don't want this. And whereas I kind of understand where you're coming from. This is worlds apart from where we were when the Xbox 360 was just killing everything, right? I mean, that thing was a powerhouse. It was on top. The PlayStation couldn't get anywhere near it. It was the system to own. People who went from the PS1 to the PS2 were jumping ship to the Xbox. And I know this firsthand because I was one of them. I had a PS1, went into the PS2, one of the greatest consoles of all time, by the way, the PlayStation 2. So naturally people would buy a PS3, right? Well, no, because Sony took 6 months too long to release it. Xbox had that head start. People couldn't wait. People were seeing their friends buying Xboxes and playing all these great exclusive games. I say exclusive, they were just playing games, right? You couldn't get them on PlayStation because the PlayStation was still stuck in the PS2 era, waiting for this PS3 to launch in March of 2006. And Xbox just won that era of gaming. The Xbox One, of course, was an absolute disaster. I'm actually a little bit surprised they managed to recover at all from that, because that really was bad. But now that we're here, maybe it's because I'm slightly older than a lot of people who make videos these days. A lot of mid-20s people calling Xbox a dead company. They don't know what they're doing and stuff. I'm nearly 40, right? I'm not that far off it. And I'm very laid back, and I do have a very broad mind. And I'm looking at this from every single angle possible. Now, the first thing you need to ask yourself in this situation, how does this affect me personally? And the answer to that question is, not at all. It's not going to affect future hardware from Microsoft. Phil Spencer has already said we're making new hardware. They've already confirmed they've got another generation of console coming. We have a handheld coming, although it may be a few years away, and they will continue to create hardware and they will continue to create games. So for me personally, nothing, literally nothing is going to change. And then from the other flip side, if you are a competitive gamer on Xbox, this isn't going to affect you either. It's just another thing that Xbox are doing. It's like if you've bought a Ninja air fryer and all of a sudden they announce a Ninja slushy machine. Does it affect you? Well, it depends. Do you want a slushy? No, I don't really need... Don't worry about it then. Nothing to do with you. It's not for you. And that is what is happening here. This is not for people who already own Xbox hardware. This is for people who don't maybe own a console, own a next-gen console, or they own a PlayStation, as I've already mentioned, and they want to play the odd exclusive. And that brings me on to something else that people keep kicking off about. Exclusives. Oh no, Xbox are putting their exclusives on Sony and Nintendo. What happened? Who cares? Why does that make a blind bit of difference to how you enjoy this game? I do not understand the logic behind, oh, Indiana Jones is going to go on PlayStation now. Oh, screw Xbox then. What's the point? What do you mean, what's the point? You were going to play it on Xbox anyway, so now that it's on PlayStation, what is it? Why? Who cares? Play it on Xbox. You were going to play. You were happy to play it there in the first place. It was an exclusive coming to the platform that you were really excited about. And now all of a sudden, just because he said this game and that game is going to Sony, oh, screw Xbox, they're giving away all their exclusives. At least they're making games, let's be honest. What does Sony make these days? And this isn't me necessarily defending Xbox. I mean, I am defending Xbox, obviously. I don't necessarily have brand loyalty. I did have a PS1, PS2, and a PS5 up until very recently. And I had almost no issues with any of those systems. I really like Sony as a company, and their consoles are fantastic. But then I also really like Xbox consoles as well. The Xbox One aside, because that thing... And again though, that does come down to people more than Xbox themselves. They had something fantastic on the go there, and people kicked off because they didn't understand it, and then they backtracked. Just quickly, I've seen a few people talk about this in the comments. What is it? Why is it behind you? What is it? It's a game map from Untitled Goose Game. I keep forgetting to reply to the comment that keeps asking this question. So, for you personally, there it is, Untitled Goose Game. One of the greatest games ever made, I might add. Maybe not, but it's very good, put it that way. I hope they make a second one. And I get people hate on things for the sake of hating on things, but there are channels out there making dedicated videos about this who are trying to make points as to why this is a terrible idea and Xbox are out of touch and such. But if they continue to make consoles and they continue to make games, why does it really make a difference if now all of a sudden I can play Halo on my phone while I'm on a beach somewhere, providing I have a decent internet connection? I don't understand how that can possibly be a bad thing. I know it would probably take a special kind of someone to want to do that. If you're on holiday, sure, you want to like soak up the atmosphere and the environment that you're in, but for younger generations who get dragged away with their parents, or for husbands who get dragged away with their wives and who just want a little bit of a break from what they're doing, they want to play a game, because let's be honest, games are awesome, you can now do that wherever you are. I think that's absolutely phenomenal, and providing it works with fairly low latency, this is absolutely going to be the future. And of course, when it comes to physical games, yes, this isn't going to benefit that at all. In fact, this is actually going to be damaging to physical media, in my opinion. And that is probably the only single negative I can take out of this situation. Physical media is already in trouble. Let's be real here. There are less and less physical games being released all the time. And of course, the argument and the discussion continues. Are we going to get disc drives in the next generation of console? What about the next generation of console? Many people, including myself, can't actually see discs lasting more than another 10 years at best. And this is almost another nail in the coffin, providing this takes off, which I actually think it will. It might take a little while for people to get used to this, because this is brand new in a sense. Yes, cloud gaming has been around for many, many years, but it's never really taken off because the technology has never really been good enough. But I believe that Xbox have done enough research here. They've done enough testing. Of course, it's been on Game Pass for a while, cloud gaming. They must be confident in this to go all in on it, which is essentially what they're doing. But in terms of physical media, yes, this is concerning, because if this does take off in the way that I actually expect it to, there will be less emphasis on Xbox pushing physical media. The reality of it is, I think we're actually going to have to accept at some point that physical media is going to stop. When it comes to music and film and things, I think they are even further away from having to worry about it. Music in particular, with the revival of vinyl and such. But when it comes to video games, I do think we are the ones that are going to suffer first. I think physical media is going to dry up completely at some point. So whereas I do see this as a pretty positive thing from Microsoft, and I am actually looking forward to giving it a go, it is concerning because physical media is already in the bin, and this is just going to put it under the bin. Right, let me read you something. Now you have to listen to this because I spent ages learning to read just for this moment. We think about hardware that can create unique value for our players or creators on our platform, he said, he being Phil Spencer. We don't need to do incremental hardware for our own benefit, taking a shot at Sony. Does a new device really give you a unique experience on screen in some way? I mean, to be fair, mate, yeah, actually, it kind of does. But he says it's less like the old days going from the original Xbox to the Xbox 360. That was standard definition to high definition. Now it's harder to show the benefits. That is unbelievably concerning if you read between the lines there, or at least if you interpret it the way that I have interpreted it. Of course, not that long ago, there was a sit-down, open podcast interview type thing where 3 members of the Xbox team, one of which was Phil Spencer, were in company of someone who said,
and what we're really focused on there is delivering the largest technical leap you will have ever seen in a hardware generation.
And now a few months later, Phil Spencer is saying, it's harder to show the benefits with new hardware. I'm sorry, mate, but you've literally just sat next to someone who said that we're about to see the greatest leap a generation has ever seen when it comes to hardware. But now you're saying it's actually harder to show it. So he's either saying, we've achieved the unthinkable and we are going to show you jaw-dropping changes, graphics and upgrades and such, or he's now backtracking and he's saying, actually, can't do that. It's not actually going to be as a big a jump as you thought it was going to be, or we thought it was going to be. So I've saved that screenshot and I will revisit that when the Xbox, whatever it's called, is released in 2026/8. But to say that concerned me when I read that is an understatement. But I mean, if we just backtrack through that little paragraph, taking shots at Sony because they don't need to do incremental hardware to sort of benefit themselves, which, you know, I mean, they kind of lost this race as well. PlayStation 5 massively outsold Xbox Series X and S, so it doesn't make any sense whatsoever for Microsoft to release a Pro console. What he's really saying, of course, is, look, we've already taken a bit of a hit with this generation. We absolutely cannot afford to take another hit here, so we're not releasing a Pro console. We know people will buy it, but we know not enough people will buy it. But he spun it to really take a dig at Sony, which, you know, it's business. They take digs at each other all the time. The sentence, does a new device really give you a unique experience on screen in some way, is a bit of a weird one, because yes, if I have a new device, there's a reason why it's new, right? Either it has graphical upgrades, RAM upgrades, so the thing is going to run faster. Maybe it's got a bigger SSD or a more powerful SSD or something, so things will read and write faster again. There's a reason why you release a console refresh. Sony weren't going to just slap a different plate on the side of their standard PS5, release it and charge 800 quid for it. There had to be an upgrade there, and there was. Now, when it comes to slim consoles, I do understand the point of them. You know, it's a bit of a refresh, it looks a bit different, maybe the hardware is slightly different, and it's a lot thinner, it's more compact, maybe it looks better than the original. For example, the Xbox One consoles, the original is a big brick. The newer ones, the S models and such, they look a lot better, they are far sleeker, and they probably run quieter as well. So yes, there is a point to that, but again, you don't see the benefit on screen. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank every single channel member. Thank you very much for signing up. You've already had some exclusive videos and of course some early access content as well, and I will continue to make it. So thank you very much to anyone and everyone who has signed up to that so far. If you'd like to get involved, link in the description. Subscriptions, if you will, start from 99 pence. I literally couldn't make it any cheaper. But for me personally, I can't say I'm like really excited about this, but I don't see a negative outside of that physical media thing that we talked about. The death of physical media, I think, is probably inevitable at this point. It's just a case of how long can we prolong the life of it. And I really hope that we can prolong the life of it for at least another 10 years before it completely disappears. Of course, we know, for the most part anyway, there are going to be physical games in the next generation. It's just a case of whether they are there the generation after. It is not entirely going to depend, but it will heavily depend on how this is an Xbox campaign goes. I think if it is successful, obviously it is going to be at the detriment of physical media. But to be fair, this is actually, in my opinion, a pretty exciting thing for those who don't own Xboxes and who want to just play the odd game here or there. Someone out there will like it. Someone out there will benefit from this. There were plenty of people who enjoyed playing Stadia. Exclusives going from one system to another one doesn't really make a difference, does it? Let's be honest. Providing they are still making these games, does it really matter if you're going to be playing Halo on a PlayStation? I know to the purist, that is like almost I'm going to be sick in my mouth just thinking about it. But for the majority of us, if I was to sit down on my PS5, don't have one, but if I did, and play Halo, yes, it would feel a bit wrong, but at the same time, so long as it's a good game, does it matter? Some questions for you there. If you want to answer any of them, feel free. Give me your opinion on what you think is going on with Xbox. Are they dead and buried in the water? Is this just a last-ditch effort to try and get people through the door? And realistically, what do you think physical media has left to offer? Do you think it is on a clock right now, and that we are just prolonging the inevitable? If you'd like to check out a video from me where I talk about some gaming myths, some did you knows, and some tips and tricks for new collectors, you can click here. And until the next time, goodbye.